Hello and welcome to this Micro Focus ZENworks Service Desk video tutorial, two-part series discussing how to migrate to the latest version of Service Desk. Part 1 covers the specific details and visual tables to assist you in your migration. Part 2 covers an upgrade demonstration video to give you a visual on the processes and steps to migrate from version 7.03 to version 7.5 Appliance. This is part 1 of the two-part series that covers the upgrade details of migrating to Service Desk version 7.5. Overview Part 1. Through this presentation, we'll be discussing the advantages for the appliance model and the administration console to manage the appliance, testing, upgrade, and strategy reminders, pre- and post-upgrade tasks, including backup tasks and restoration of customizations to have your Service Desk upgraded in your environment, system requirements moving to version 7.5, debug and log information, along with resources available to you for successfully completing the migration, and any known issues. Be sure to catch part 2 of this two-part series, which is a demonstration video migrating from version 7.03 installed on a standalone OS with an external database to the version 7.5 appliance retaining the same external database. Through the part 2 video demonstration, you will visually see how the different steps of the upgrade should be performed. And you can quickly find reference links to these videos and others in the Service Desk Cookbook TID 7021281. Let's first talk about the advantages for the Common Appliance Framework model. This model requires an additional virtual disk, also known as VA storage or virtual appliance storage. This model standardizes the migration path for future versions, allows for quicker upgrade processes as the product evolves to newer versions of the application and base operating system. And the additional volume helps with these quicker upgrades, minimizing downtime. The operating system online updates can be performed or scheduled through the Service Desk Online Updates channel, processed in the administration console. This also increases the product security by not applying unnecessary patches or updates and only applying services needed for the Service Desk to function. The ability for backups with snapshots before upgrades, minimizing prep time before upgrades. There is no charge for the operating system licenses. Faster product release cycles because the enhancements and testing are done on a single platform instead of multiple platforms. Internally minted SSL certificates is the standard and secures the website, and external certificates can be imported easily from the administration console. Change control system downtime for upgrades is vastly reduced, and the administration console on port 9443 allows management of the appliance without additional Linux experience in a common browser. And another advantage of the appliance is you can easily prop up a no-cost test system to train or test upgrades. These testing and upgrade strategy reminders are listed here and explained throughout the presentation. Let's discuss understanding of the Micro Focus ZENworks Service Desk version 7.5 appliance. If you are currently on an appliance, this will be a natural transition to upgrade to the latest version 7.5 appliance. The only new step is an additional version 7.5 volume called VA storage, virtual appliance storage, for the SD components. If you have an operating system, either Linux or Windows, where the Service Desk application was installed, or an older version appliance, we'll discuss how it will be migrated to the latest version 7.5 appliance model. Be sure to note which database is in use on your Service Desk environment, internal or external databases. VM appliances have an embedded database pre-configured for migration. If using internal database, a migration will be a natural transition to the next version. If your working database is external, after propping up the newer version, you'll disconnect the external database from the older server and attach it to the new appliance, allowing for schema upgrades on the external database when the migration starts. Service Desk migrations can only be done in 1 or 2 version increments, So if you're currently on version 7.3 or version 7.4, then you can migrate directly to version 7.5. If you're on an older version than 7.3, then you need to strategize the migration path. We'll cover this in a series of slides. Verify the system requirements and the database requirements prior to starting, and I'll cover these in easy readable slides. The database schema and system files are upgraded with each upgrade iteration. There are different migration methods over the various versions. In place, where you have a server and you install the upgrade right over the top of the existing version, and side by side, where you prop up an additional server and pull the configurations and database, if necessary, information across the network to the server. There are slightly different processes going from Service Desk installed on an OS and migrating to an appliance, or migrating from an appliance to an appliance. When going from an operating system to an appliance, you must copy the /lifetime folder. The appliance migration utility will not do this for you. When going from appliance to appliance, a migration wizard on the console or administration portal will do the necessary copying of the lifetime folder. In this step, we'll be showing both because we'll be going from OS to appliance and then upgrading the appliance to the latest appliance. After obtaining Service Desk files, or any other files for that matter, save yourself some potential grief by verifying the file against the MD5 checksum for file integrity. Time sync should be consistent between the servers and the database server, if you're using an external database. Be sure when propping up new servers and communicating between them and the database that they are on the same subnet with quick connections. As Service Desk has evolved to the Common Appliance Framework, the file structure has evolved as well. So the file location, logs, and commands will have evolved through different versions to the latest Common Appliance Framework model. So has the appliance volume structure. Version 7.5 is using that additional volume referred to as VA storage. This is where most of the Service Desk application information will reside. You can upgrade without adding a license. However, if you have modified your licensing between Standard and ITIL or ITIL, be sure to add that license key. Once completed, don't forget to configure the new features that were added along the way. Double-check your external system communications with connections such as email, LDAP, AMI, and ZENworks if applicable, and other systems like OpenID, two-form authentication, single sign-on, etc. And document these configurations and settings in your company's documentation. Pre- and post-upgrade tasks are detailed in the documentation and in the next few slides. Some of the pre-upgrade and backup tasks have been mentioned, but this is a more detailed list of those tasks. Be sure to check the database system requirements for version 7.5. If the current database used by the Service Desk is an external database and not supported in Service Desk version 7.5, then upgrade the database first before migrating to Service Desk version 7.5. Be sure to have backups or snapshots of the different components. If using snapshots, then make sure the systems are down when the snapshot is taken. This way, transactions are not being performed during the backup or snapshot. Also, copy files so that the system modifications can be duplicated to the upgraded system. Some of those components might be the lifetime folder, system files, the database, certificates, and if you have customizations to banners or made modifications to Tomcat, like changing the default port or session timeout, or Java for memory modifications, back up those related files and certificates. These are all mentioned in the documentation. Double-check your external system communications with connections such as email, LDAP, ZENworks, and if applicable, other things like the two-form authentication, single sign-on, or OpenID, etc. Identify and note the network, DNS, and NTP settings, for these are not migrated and will need to be restored to the original IP address, DNS name, and NTP configuration at the end of the migration. The upgrade will upgrade database schema and system files. Disk space availability is required to successfully complete the migration without running out of space. I'll cover these requirements in an upcoming table as well. Basically, having 5 GB free for installation or upgrade, starting with a 20 GB drive or larger, is the most common setting. Now with version 7.5, it requires an additional storage volume, commonly known as VA storage, with a minimum of 40 GB storage and at least 5 GB available free. This is used for the common appliance upgrade model. Future upgrades will be easier by propping up new appliance, thus providing the latest OS, and moving the VA storage to the newer server. VA storage holds all the service desk components and internal database, if using internal database. This is one of the major advantages of the appliance model. Since some of the settings are configured once, fire and forget type of configuration, for instance, email, LDAP, AMI, ZENworks configurations, and so forth, it is a best practice to document or take screenshots of these Service Desk console configuration pages, along with other settings listed above for disaster recovery and your company's records. Stop the appliance services before migrating so users or customers can't interfere with the upgrade processes. Be sure to leave the database running also. Try to determine a backup plan. By using the side-by-side upgrade methods, if you have a backup of the database, you can revert and power up the older server and still be up and running. Post-upgrade and restore tasks. When you upgrade or migrate from an OS-installed Service Desk to the next version appliance Service Desk, be sure to have a copy of the lifetime folder to overlay on the appliance prior to starting the migration, so that attachments, customized and localized strings, customized banners, and indexing won't be lost. After that, migrating from the appliance to appliance, the migration utility in the console will take care of the lifetime folder. Be sure to decommission older versions of the Service Desk servers according to your company's policies. Power off, remove from domain, etc. Update licenses only if it's changed. Restore the NTP configurations along with the original network and DNS configurations. The following files only need to be reconfigured if you specifically modified them manually, like the banners. If you've customized your banners, restore them. Restore the changes in the CSS files and the Tomcat server configurations like WebXML and Server XML. Again, do not replace these files. Just restore the customizations. If memory settings were changed, restore those changes from the saved catalina.sh file to the etc initd Service Desk server file. If the session timeout or default ports were changed, restore the Server XML and Web XML settings. Restoration of the external certificates is applicable using the administration console. More post-upgrade and restore tasks. Check the external system communications like database connection, which is a given, email configuration, LDAP settings include verifying the group configurations. Also, if you had or wish to have the AMI or ZENworks integrations enabled, configure those settings. And finally, if you have single sign-on or two-form factor authentication configured, check those settings in the ZENworks Service Desk version 7.5. Configure online update, registering the Service Desk system to retrieve online updates to maintain the OS for the appliance. Back up the new Service Desk version 7.5 appliance and database using the best practices. Arriving to version 7.5, the system may have gone through a lot of iterations and changes. File structure changes for certificates and Tomcat. Even the commands have evolved from lifetime restart to systemctl restart lifetime service. And adding an administration console where you don't need command lines to restart and configure. Update your company's Service Desk system configuration documentation with these new nuances. As mentioned, the Micro Focus ZENworks Service Desk version 7.5 supports the appliance model only, and the upgrades must be in steps of 1 or 2 version increments, which means you cannot jump from version 7.03 directly to version 7.5. or from 7.2 directly to version 7.5. There are too many database and file changes in between that are requirements along the way. Static IP or reserved leased DHCP IP addresses are mandatory. But while we are migrating, the DNS isn't so important since this is a temporary setting to get to the final version 7.5. We will presume you have a Service Desk already installed, so we won't go over the requirements for the initial install like JDK or default ports, DNS requirements, and so forth. those should already be established, and we'll concentrate on the upgrade migration process to version 7.5. As always, you can refer to your version's documentation for more details. With this view, we can see the OS type and the method of upgrade. There's an ability to do a standalone or in-place upgrades, but we'll leverage the appliance by doing a side-by-side as not to disturb the original 703 system. This can be used as part of our backout plan. The only caveat is the database. If you need to back out, you can revert to that older version of Service Desk and the matching database. We'll start with version 703 installed on a Windows OS with static IP 192.168.1.201. We'll upgrade to version 7.2 appliance using the side-by-side migration, overlaying the lifetime folder and then starting the migration, making sure that the IP address for version 7.2 is static, but of course it can be a temporary live IP address while moving through each version. The two systems have to talk to each other for the migration, and best to have them on the same subnet. This is where you restore the lifetime folder from the original OS installed Service Desk to the appliance and then continue the migration. Next, we'll upgrade to version 7.2 appliance to version 7.4 appliance via side-by-side migration. Version 7.4 will have another temporary available static IP address. These two have to talk to each other, and best to have them on the same subnet. Turn off version 7.03 Windows Server. Next, we'll upgrade the version 7.4 appliance to version 7.5 appliance via side-by-side migration. The Windows OS server with version 7.03 installed, which is powered down, its IP address can then be used to configure the version 7.5 appliance. Version 7.5 appliance will be configured with the original Service Desk IP address of 192.168.1.201 in this case. The version 7.4 appliance and version 7.5 appliance need to talk to each other for the migration to complete. If at the start you were at a version 7.4 appliance and you migrated to version 7.5 appliance, you would still use a side-by-side migration, giving the version 7.5 appliance a temporary IP until the version 7.4 appliance was powered down, and then modifying the DNS and IP settings. As long as our system requirements are met for all the components, database, operating system, hypervisor, memory, etc., then we can move forward. Let's take a look at those components. System requirements, server, operating systems. These details are from the documentation, but as we run through other Micro Focus Service Desk compatibilities, be sure to check the documentation. There are other items in play that you'll have to reference in the documentation, like for supported administration browsers, supported languages and particulars like DBO rights, etc. Since version 7.5 is an appliance-only model, we can strategize on how to get to version 7.5 with the least amount of component upgrades. Remember, we must go in increments of 2 subversions at a time. For server operating system, we have version 7.03 installed, and on an OS Windows 2008 R2 SP1. We can jump 2 levels to version 7.2 appliance model using the side-by-side upgrade. Then we can jump another 2 versions to version 7.4 appliance model using the side-by-side upgrade again. And finally to our destination, to version 7.5 using the side-by-side migration upgrade. This will achieve our version 7.5 Service Desk upgrade, keeping within the OS requirements with the minimum amount of change. Now let's check our database requirements. The database system requirements change and evolve over time. There are other particulars you should verify depending on the database you choose. All databases must use password-based authentication. Integrated authentication with Active Directory or eDirectory is not supported. For instance, MS-SQL requires DBO privileges and particulars on supporting always-on availability with clustering. Or if using Oracle, it requires user account to have access any space and create any workspace, unlimited table space, and so forth. Note, create a separate user account for Micro Focus Service Desk. It is recommended not to create a Micro Focus Service Desk objects under SysDBA or system account. Again, all databases must use password-based authentication. We start with our version 7.03 on a Windows OS, with the database on an external Windows MSSQL 2008 R2 SP1. And we're going to be moving to version 7.5 Appliance with an external database. Since the Windows MSSQL 2008 R2 SP1 is supported on version 7.5, we can remain on the MSSQL 2008 R2 SP1 database. Let's look at our hypervisors. Be aware of supported hypervisors in use for these particular product versions. For version 7.5 Service Desk, we'll need to be on one of these platforms versions for the hypervisor. Using the appliance in our demonstration, in this particular presentation, we'll be using VM Workstation 12. Now let's move to our needed RAM, disk, and CPU core requirements. Most of the system requirements for the Service Desk stays the same until version 7.5, where the VA storage is an added volume. Prior to version 7.5, 2 GB minimum RAM with 4 GB RAM was recommended. As of version 7.5, this increases to 4 GB minimum RAM. Keep in mind that these disk space requirements should account for 5 GB disk space for installing and 10 GB for running, plus content attachments that are stored. And finally, we can check out our system requirement file modifications. Only if these system settings, memory, default port, session timeouts, or certificates were modified would you need to restore the settings to the version 7.5 appliance files to gain those configurations back after the migration. They are not carried forward by default. You do not need to modify them along the way, only the end results. Prior to the version 7.5, the memory configurations were in the Catalina SH file. These settings have been moved to the etc initd servicedesk.server file. Regarding the lifetime folder that links your attachments, indexing, and other configurations, at the point where you migrate from Standalone to Appliance, the /lifetime folder must be restored. If your migration process, migrating from Standalone to Appliance, is prior to version 7.5, restore the lifetime folder to the installed root. If in your migration process you are going from Standalone version 7.3 or version 7.4 for that matter, migrating to version 7.5 Appliance, then restore the lifetime folder to the VA Storage lifetime folder. This is that additional volume required for the version 7.5 appliance. Moving this /lifetime folder does not have to be done when going from appliance to appliance. The migration utility has automated this. Moving the lifetime folder only needs to occur one time at the point when migrating from a standalone to a higher appliance version. Remember, default port settings are in the server.xml file, and session timeouts are in the web.xml file. If these were adjusted for your environment, be sure to modify these files similarly on the version 7.5 appliance. Remember, service desk settings like DNS, NTP, IP configuration, banners, and certificates are not migrated and can be modified and certificates imported via the version 7.5 appliance console. Let's take a look at what the appliance administration console looks like. The version 7.5 appliance model administration console can be brought up in a browser. Once the appliance server is up and running, its console will display the URL to the administration console site. It will be on port 9443. When you enter that URL and port, log in with SDadmin and the password that was used when configuring the appliance. Then the main page for the administration console will appear. This will allow you to manage and maintain the appliance server and service desk components from a server standpoint. Be sure to use the administration console exclusively for changes instead of YAST or YAST2. Part 2 of this two-part series on migration details for Micro Focus Service Desk version 7.5 will show a visual demonstration migrating from a standalone service desk environment to an appliance version 7.5. Be sure to view that part 2 of this series. See the documentation or other videos on installing the external certificates, if applicable, from the administration console using Digital Certificates View. Register the version 7.5 appliance for online updates in the administration console using the Online Updates view. And after registration, verify that all the needed online updates are applied. Some Micro Focus Service Desk debug and log locations. For debug and log locations that might need to be referenced, you can refer to TID 7017045. The Service Desk has developed to the Common Appliance Framework model, so some of the commands and directory structures have shifted along the way. Those are listed here depending on the current version you have in place, or you can refer to TID 7018199. Some Micro Focus Service Desk resources are listed here as well for your convenience. Micro Focus Service Desk documentation site where you can find information on your specific version. Micro Focus Service Desk public forums to check with colleagues on features and issues you might want to investigate. Micro Focus Service Desk YouTube channel has many videos on the Service Desk capabilities and troubleshooting. Micro Focus Ideas portal for the Service Desk, where we get some of your best ideas to be implemented in Service Desk. And then Micro Focus Service Desk version 7 cookbook, TID 7021281, which is an overall reference link for version 7.x processes to upgrade. There is a known issue that occurs when connecting Micro Focus Service Desk version 7.5 to the ZENworks Configuration Management 2017 zone that's at version update 3. If using ZENworks integration or AMI against 2017 update 3 zone, you may receive an application exception error and a patch will need to be applied. See TID 7023329 and notify Micro Focus customer support for that patch. Summary for Part 1. We have discussed details of the migration like the advantages for the appliance model, testing and upgrade strategies including OS, methods, database, etc., pre- and post-upgrade tasks including backups and restores, the system requirements, the appliance administration console, and we also covered some debug and logging information along with resources and known issues. Summary Part 2 is a separate video demonstration migrating from version 703 installed on a standalone OS with an external database, migrating to the version 7.5 appliance retaining the same external database. Through the Part 2 video, you will visually see how the different steps of the upgrade should be performed. Remember, you can find these and other Service Desk related videos on the Micro Focus YouTube channel, with reference links on the Service Desk version 7 cookbook TID 7021281. We hope Part 1 of this series helps with the details of migrating your Service Desk environment. This concludes Part 1 of the Service Desk version 7.5 migration details.